I parked my Bentley Continental GT3 blocks from my parents' Beacon Hill brownstone, deliberately tucking the $280,000 car behind a delivery van where they couldn't see it. My mother's text had been crafted to wound. Family meeting. 7 p.m. sharp. Your father is worried sick about your situation. My situation. That's how they'd been referring to my career for 3 years now, ever since I'd walked away from my position as Chief Strategy Officer at Hartley Pharmaceuticals to go off and play scientist, as my father called it. Or, as the rest of the family preferred to say it, to become a glorified lab assistant. My phone buzzed. Rachel, my actual chief of staff, was confirming the final details on the Pfizer licensing deal. Final terms locked at $3.1 billion. They blinked first. I smiled, typing back. Accept. Have legal walk it through tonight. And Rachel, keep that 7:30 entrance we rehearsed. Bring the fortune cover. Of course, Dr. Hartley. Cover proof and signed term sheet en route. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. A plain navy blazer from H&M, tied back hair. No jewelry except the simple silver necklace I'd worn since college. Let them keep underestimating me for 30 more minutes. The longer the lie held, the louder the truth would land. My mother opened the door before I knocked. Pearls, cream cashmere, freshly highlighted hair, the usual disapproving tilt of her chin. Victoria. You're 4 minutes late. Mom, traffic from Cambridge. Punctuality is a discipline, dear. Something to consider in your current line of work. She steered me through the foyer. The sitting room had been arranged like an intervention. Father in his usual leather wingback by the fire, still in the suit he'd worn to the Hartley Pharmaceuticals board meeting that afternoon. My older brother James and his wife Vanessa were arranged on the velvet sofa. Even Aunt Margaret had been summoned, perched in the corner chair with a glass of sherry, watching like a hawk that had spotted a wounded animal. I love your blazer, Vanessa said, brushing my cheek with an air kiss. Is it new? H&M, I said brightly. Trying to be sustainable. She blanched. The horror of off the rack. Sit down, Vicky, my father said. We need to talk. It's Victoria, Dad. I haven't been Vicky since I was 9. Whatever you're calling yourself this week, he said. We're here because we're worried. Genuinely worried. James cleared his throat with the practiced gravitas of a man who'd been rehearsing his speech in the mirror. 3 years ago, you had a corner office on the Pru. You were running strategy for a Fortune 500 company. You were engaged to Daniel. Daniel. The corporate lawyer my parents had practically wedding planned for me before I called it off and walked out of Hartley Pharmaceuticals the same week. The same Daniel whose firm I'd just outbid for an exclusive licensing partnership 2 months earlier. Not that any of them knew that. And now, my father said, you're living in some loft in Somerville, working as he waved a hand vaguely. A lab manager, my mother supplied helpfully, as if that's better. At some startup nobody's heard of, James added. What is it called again? Hartley Genomics. I kept my voice level. The company they'd never heard of had been valued, as of 9 that morning, at $18.6 billion. And of course, you took the family name. Aunt Margaret sniffed. Lovely. So when this little experiment fails, we'll all hear about it. Helena's daughter just got her MD/PhD at Harvard, my mother offered. Fellowship at Mass General. Beautiful girl. That could have been you. I checked my watch. 7:23. 7 minutes until Rachel's entrance. Have you even told us what your company does? My mother pressed. All this secrecy. The hours. And what do you have to show for it? James pulled out his phone, smug. I looked it up. Lab manager salaries in Boston. $72,000 to $94,000. Vicky, please. I make more in Q1 bonuses. My father stood up, falling into the same CEO posture I'd watched him use to fire 24 executives over the years. It ends tonight. I've spoken with Walter Kim. There's a director-level slot opening up at Hartley Pharma. Less responsibility than you had before, but it's a return path. You start Monday. Daniel's still single, my mother added hopefully. He just made name partner. He asks about you, Victoria. I'm happy where I am, I said quietly. Happy, my father's voice rose. Happy is a luxury. You are a disappointment. Do you understand that? You walked away from everything we built for you to pipette mouse blood in a basement. The doorbell rang. My mother frowned. We're not expecting. Actually, we are, I said. Rachel walked in. Tailored Brunello Cucinelli. Leather portfolio. Folded copy of Fortune under one arm. Dr. Hartley. My apologies for interrupting. The jet is wheels up at 6 tomorrow for Basel. Roche is asking about contract markups, and Pfizer's general counsel needs your final signature on the licensing agreement before midnight Eastern. Also, Fortune wants confirmation on Wednesday's cover. The room froze. My mother's sherry glass paused midair. James's phone slipped sideways in his hand. My father stood there with the word disappointment still hanging in the air like smoke. Is that the Pfizer term sheet? I asked Rachel, holding out my hand. Yes, Dr. Hartley. 3.1 billion. All cash, milestone-free. Your earlier instructions held. Vanessa choked on her champagne. Billion? Hartley Genomics, I said, taking the Mont Blanc Rachel offered and signing the term sheet against the marble-topped console table, isn't actually the parent company. The parent company is Hartley Bioscience Holdings. We're the world's leading next-generation genomics platform. I paused, looking at my father. You may have heard of us. We acquired controlling interest in Hartley Pharmaceuticals last Friday. My mother's sherry glass shattered against the parquet floor. Rachel, please move this to legal and file the Pfizer paperwork. About tomorrow's Basel meeting, let's take the Global 7500 instead of the Falcon. It'll be a long week. And the dinner with Bill on Thursday. Reschedule, Dr. Hartley? Tell Bill I'm having a family dinner. If everyone's free, of course. I turned back to the assembled Hartleys. We have a great deal to discuss about Hartley Pharmaceuticals' new direction. The silence had weight. From the sofa, James whispered, CEO. Actually, founder, CEO, and majority shareholder, Rachel said pleasantly, handing me the Fortune cover. And according to next week's issue, the quiet revolutionary. How Victoria Hartley built an $18 billion genomics empire while her family thought she was pipetting mouse blood. I looked at my father, still rooted by the fireplace. So, Dad, about that director-level slot at Hartley Pharma. I think I'll pass. The next morning I sat in my real office, the entire 47th floor of a glass tower overlooking the Charles, watching Boston wake up through floor-to-ceiling windows. The Hartley Bioscience logo glowed softly on the back wall, visible from the rooftops of the back bay. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the night before. Mom, Victoria, please call us. Your father is beside himself. James, sis, maybe we could grab coffee? There's a strategy role I've been thinking about. Vanessa, saw the Fortune leak on Twitter. Always knew you were the smart one. Dad, nothing. Rachel appeared with coffee and the morning briefings. Your father has been in our lobby for 90 minutes. Security wants to know how to handle him. I pulled up the camera feed. There he stood, Dr. Richard Hartley, CEO of Hartley Pharmaceuticals, in the same suit from last night, somehow looking smaller. The man who'd run a $9 billion pharmaceutical company for 26 years, now technically an employee of the daughter he'd called a disappointment, signing in at the visitor's desk. Send him up. And Rachel, hold every call except Basel. While I waited, I studied the wall behind my desk. My first patent certificate, age 24. The framed first check from our seed investor. A photograph of me and our 6 original employees in a borrowed lab at MIT, the day we got our first FDA breakthrough designation. The door opened. My father stepped in, then stopped. Took in the office. The screens with real-time market data on every major biotech in the world. The Cy Twombly worth more than his house. The view. Your mother didn't sleep, he said finally. Cleaned the parquet 3 times. Probably needs new wax. Sherry's tough. He winced. Why didn't you tell us? Tell you what, Dad? That I was building a company that would make Hartley Pharmaceuticals look like a regional drug rep agency? Or that I bought you out to keep you from running it into the ground? He sat heavily in the chair across from me. The board. They knew. Of course they knew. Hartley Pharma's market cap dropped 38% in 18 months, Dad. The industry is moving to gene therapy, and you're still mass-producing Me Too statins. Your board voted unanimously. So all this time, When we thought you were a lab manager, you were running a global biotech platform, closing licensing deals with every major pharma, building therapies that will rewrite oncology in the next decade. I paused, but none of you ever asked. You were too busy being embarrassed by my situation. He pulled up a Bloomberg article on his phone. Victoria Hartley, the stealth CEO who built an $18 billion genomics empire in plain sight. He read aloud, a direct quote here from Bill Gates calling you the most original mind in genomic medicine since the Human Genome Project. Same Bill I'm having dinner with Thursday. Wednesday, actually. Thursday is the Hartley Pharma board meeting. First order of business is voting on new leadership. The color drained from his face. You're firing me. Retiring you, Dad. With a generous package. The company needs new direction. And before you ask, James won't be taking over either. James has been groomed. James lost $42 million on the European generics rollout. His grooming consisted of golf weekends and stealing credit from people 3 levels below him. The intercom buzzed. Dr. Hartley, Basil's online. And the Wall Street Journal is here for the exclusive. My father stood, straightening his tie, the same nervous tick I'd watched my entire childhood. Victoria, last night, what we said. You called me a disappointment, Dad. In front of the entire family. Because I was working as what was Mom's word? A glorified lab assistant. Instead of marrying Daniel and becoming a Hartley Pharma trophy. I was wrong. Yes, you were. I turned to the window, watching a private helicopter, mine, touch down on the building's helipad. You know what was worst? Not the insults. Not the condescension. It was that in 3 years, none of you ever asked if I was happy. If I was building something I believed in. You just decided I'd failed because I wasn't following the script you wrote when I was 12. And now, he said quietly. Now that we know? I turned back. Let him see me. Not the daughter. The CEO. Now you watch. From the sidelines. I slid a folder across the desk. These are your retirement terms. Generous severance. Board emeritus title. Full benefits. Operational authority ends Thursday at noon. He took the folder with hands that visibly shook. All this time, you were planning this. No, Dad. I was building something extraordinary. Buying Hartley Pharma was a Tuesday afternoon. I checked my watch. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a Swiss regulatory team to update. And please tell James that the strategy role he's been asking about isn't open. We hire on merit. At the door he paused. Your mother wanted to ask about Sunday dinner. Tell her 7. I'll have a car sent. I paused. And Dad, wear something comfortable. It's going to be a long evening. The Hartley Pharmaceuticals boardroom went silent as I walked in, exactly 1 week later. The H&M blazer was gone, replaced by a charcoal Acris suit cut to within a millimeter. 12 board members around the cherrywood table. My father at the head for the last time. James on his right, the smirk replaced by a clenched jaw. The SEC filings I'd had Rachel send him had detailed my net worth, $11.8 billion. More than the entire Hartley extended family combined, multiplied by a number he refused to repeat out loud. Good morning, I said, taking the seat opposite my father. Before we begin, I believe there are some organizational changes to address. Now wait a damned minute, James was already standing. Sit down, James. You can't just walk in here. Actually, I can. I nodded to Rachel, who circled the table handing out leather portfolios to each board member. As of 9 this morning, Hartley Bioscience Holdings owns 68% of Hartley Pharmaceuticals voting shares. As CEO, I'm implementing immediate changes. This is a family company. Sit down, James, my father said, quietly. He already knew what was coming. I connected my laptop to the projector. Let's review performance. Under current management, Hartley Pharmaceuticals has lost 38% of market value. Failed European generics rollout, $42 million in losses. Failed digital health partnership, $19 million wasted. Pipeline failure rate, triple the industry mean. Customer retention dropping below 60%. The board members shifted uncomfortably. None of these were new numbers. And then I continued, there's this. A new slide appeared. Internal emails. Years of them. Systematic dismissal of female-led research proposals. A directive from my father to preserve the company's traditional culture, which had, conveniently, kept the executive team 85% male and 100% over 55. Several board members glanced at the floor. They'd signed off on those policies. "This is taken out of context," James protested. "We were preserving the culture that called my gene therapy proposal charming and ambitious," I said, pulling up another email. "Your words, Dad." May 2022. His face went gray. "Here's what happens next." I stood, commanding the room exactly the way my father had taught me when I was 16, never expecting I'd use the lessons against him. Dr. Richard Hartley retires effective Friday. James Hartley's position is terminated, effective immediately. The board will be restructured around scientific leadership and pipeline innovation. 3 new seats. "You can't fire me," James snarled. "I'm family." "That's exactly why I should." I pulled up his expense reports. "These unauthorized hedges you took out using corporate accounts. Under my leadership, they will trigger an SEC review unless you accept a quiet departure with severance. Choose." The room went lethally quiet. James went red, then white. "You're destroying Dad's legacy." "No, James. I'm saving it." Hartley Pharmaceuticals was 4 years from being acquired in a fire sale. Your traditional values were killing a 100-year-old company. Want to know what your sister, the lab manager, did in the same 3 years? Rachel dimmed the lights. The Hartley Bioscience growth chart climbed like a launch trajectory across the screen. Market cap, $18.6 billion. Pipeline assets, 47 late-stage programs. Partnership announced this morning with Moderna for next-generation mRNA-delivered gene editing. That's why Bill keeps rescheduling dinner. One board member whistled softly. Another was already updating his LinkedIn under the table. "Dad," James pleaded. "Say something." But my father just sat there, finally looking at me. Not as his disappointing daughter. As the leader he'd always wanted, just not in the form he'd imagined. "Severance is generous," I continued. "Health insurance through retirement, stock options vesting fully, comfortable retirement for Dad. James, 2 years of salary, contingent on the NDA. The hedge trades stay sealed. And if I refuse? Then the SEC gets very interested in those European numbers. Specifically the 7 million that never made it back from Frankfurt." James slumped. He'd thought no one would notice. I'd noticed everything. Documented everything. 3 years of receipts while he golfed. "Cars are waiting outside." I gestured to the windows. "Your offices have been packed." But first, I placed a final document on the table. Dad needs to sign the leadership transition. My father took the Mont Blanc, the same one I'd used to sign the Pfizer term sheet against the console table in his living room. His hand trembled a little. "Was any of it real?" he asked. "The loft. The lab manager job. The loft is real. I own the building. The lab manager job was CEO from day one. I just let you see what you wanted to see." "Why?" "Because 3 years ago, you all told me my ideas weren't welcome here. So I built somewhere they would be." He signed. "Dr. Hartley," Rachel was at the door. "The press is ready." "Thank you." I gathered my things then paused. "Oh, James. The strategy role." "Still no. We hire on merit." As I walked out I heard one board member whisper, "Did you see the Moderna numbers?" And another reply, "Forget that. Did you see how she signed?" She's been signing CEO for 3 years, right under their noses. In the elevator, Rachel handed me the morning's market update. Hartley Pharma stock up 31% on the acquisition news. Hartley Bioscience up another $1 billion in market cap since opening bell. Your mother called again. About Sunday. I smiled, thinking of the Fortune previews I'd had couriered to every Beacon Hill book club and Wellesley alumni breakfast. By Sunday, every social circle that had whispered about my failure would know exactly what I'd built. "Tell her I'll be there," I said as the elevator opened to a wall of cameras. "I'm bringing a new family tradition. Success on my own terms." Sunday dinner at the Hartley Brownstone felt different now. The same Limoges china, the same crystal candlesticks my grandmother had brought from Paris in 1953, but the gravity in the room had shifted seismically. My mother had spent 5 hours with the caterers preparing every dish I'd loved as a child. Roast lamb, saffron risotto, lemon tart, a peace offering plated on bone china. I arrived deliberately early, having spent the morning closing a $4 billion partnership with Roche. Hartley Bioscience stock was up another 17% on the announcement. My father's retirement package had quietly gained $12 million in value. He wasn't celebrating. Victoria, sweetheart. My mother flew at me, then stopped awkwardly 2 feet away, unsure how to greet this new version of her daughter. The CEO version. The 11-figure version. Hi, Mom. I handed her a small wrapped box. A pair of Mikimoto pearl earrings I'd picked up in Tokyo the week before. I remembered you loved their classic line. She opened the box and her hands shook. We saw you on CNBC this morning. With Mary Barra. Just a panel on biomanufacturing. I flew back this afternoon. I didn't mention the jet. Let her wonder about my schedule, for once. My father sat in his study, staring at the Wall Street Journal. My face was on the cover. The Quiet Revolutionary, How Victoria Hartley Rewrote Genomics While Playing Lab Tech. The article walked through every project Hartley Pharmaceuticals had killed before I left, and what each had since become inside Hartley Bioscience. The board ratified everything, he said without looking up. Unanimous. They're pragmatic. My pipeline doubles their bonuses next quarter. And James signed the package. Had to. Forensic audit found 4 more violations after the SEC review. He's lucky I'm keeping it sealed. My mother appeared in the doorway with a glass of the single malt I developed a taste for last year. She'd been doing her research. Vanessa called, she said carefully. She and James, they're divorcing. Effective Tuesday. After the audit, James's trades weren't the only ones I found. I sipped the whiskey. Vanessa has been front-running me on Hartley Pharma stock for 2 years. Using James's access. The SEC will find that file in their next sweep. The doorbell rang. My mother flinched. That'll be Margaret. She insisted on coming. Perfect. She should hear this too. Aunt Margaret swept in wearing labels that hadn't existed in her closet last week. Loro Piana cashmere. Hermes scarf. Clearly purchased in the 72 hours since the news broke. Victoria, darling. I always told everyone you were the brilliant one in this family. Did you? I pulled out my phone. Want to listen to the recording from last week's intervention? When you compared me unfavorably to Helena's daughter. The room dropped 10 degrees. That was a misunderstanding. Like when I told Helena you'd finally hire her daughter at Hartley Bioscience. Mass General rescinded her fellowship, I said. Found out she was named in James's offshore trades. Funny how these things connect. My mother served dinner with hands that wouldn't quite stay still. Conversation stayed superficial, the Pop's opening night, vintage notes on the Bordeaux, until my father finally asked the question they'd all been avoiding. Why didn't you tell us what you were building? I set down my fork. Remember my last quarterly presentation at Hartley Pharma? The one where I proposed pivoting 20% of R&D into gene editing. You laughed, Dad. You called it charming and ambitious. James asked if I'd watched too much science fiction. You voted me down 9-1. So I left. I left Daniel. I left the corner office. And I built it anyway. We were wrong, he admitted. Yes. But every patronizing comment, every dismissive vote, just funded the next decision. You think you broke me. You compounded me. And now, my mother whispered. Now that we know? Now you watch. Watch as I transform the company you said was too traditional to change. Watch as the daughter you called a lab manager rebuilds an industry. Watch as I do every single thing you said I couldn't. I turned to Aunt Margaret. Watch closely. My phone buzzed. Rachel, on schedule. Dr. Hartley, Beijing, approved the partnership. Time wants you for next month's cover. Bill confirmed Wednesday his foundation is interested in the malaria platform. The table went still. Thank you, Rachel. Have the jet ready for Tokyo Tuesday. I'll review the contracts in the air. After I hung up, my mother tried again. We're hosting a family reunion in August. Your cousins. The same cousins who mocked the lab manager job on Instagram. They feel terrible. Forward me their resumes. My HR team is always looking for entry-level positions. Victoria. My father's voice cracked, just slightly. We were wrong. Completely. But you're still our daughter. Am I? Because last week I was a disappointment. An embarrassment to the Hartley name. I stood. Now I'm the most successful Hartley in 3 generations, and suddenly the family is calling. Please, my mother whispered. We want to make this right. I looked around the dining room, the silver, the Sargent portrait of my grandfather, the fireplace mantle of family achievements. The success they'd wanted me to inherit on their terms. Here's what's going to happen. Hartley Pharmaceuticals will be folded into Hartley Bioscience over the next 18 months. Dad's retirement is secure. James's secrets stay buried, provided he stays quiet. Margaret, your social circle will know the truth by Tuesday. And Mom, I turned to her. You'll have to accept that your daughter isn't just successful. She's more successful than the son you spent your life grooming. Sunday dinners? My mother asked, almost too quiet to hear. We'll see. My calendar runs through Basel, Tokyo, and Geneva for the rest of the quarter. I checked my watch, a Patek that cost more than the Sargent on the wall. I have a board call with Sao Paulo in an hour. As I crossed the foyer, my father called out from the study door. Victoria. That gene editing proposal you made. I found it last night. In the bottom drawer. It was extraordinary. We were too blind to see it. I turned, one hand on the doorframe. No, Dad. You weren't blind. You just couldn't see past the future you'd already written for me. But that's all right. It made the view from where I'm standing now so much sweeter. Outside, my driver held the door of the Maybach. Home, Dr. Hartley? No. I smiled, thinking of every late night in a borrowed lab at MIT, every grant rejection, every investor who'd called my pitch interesting. Take me to the office. Tokyo doesn't sleep, and neither do I. The car pulled away from the brownstone, leaving behind a family who had finally understood that their greatest legacy wasn't the son they'd groomed, it was the daughter they'd refused to see coming. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's exceeding every expectation they never thought you'd reach.